Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I think there is a myth that if something is in the cloud, it's safe. Until, of course, you lose lots of data and find out the hard way that that is not always the case. But I recently discovered a company called Rewind that backs up and protects cloud data for businesses using popular SaaS tools such as Shopify, BigCommerce, QuickBooks, and Trello. But again, behind all of that, there is a great story of a man that helped grow Rewind to become one of Canada's fastest growing companies. And also, he built a company that people love working at because it was featured on Ottawa's Best Places to Work in 2018 and 2019. They didn't have the award in 2020, but hey, have no fear. They won it again this year. And Rewind is also trusted by 80,000 businesses to protect their data. So with that stage set, I want you to buckle up and hold on tight because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Ottawa in Canada, where Mike Potter is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Mike. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Mike Potter. I am the CEO at Rewind. Rewind is a cloud-to-cloud backup provider for SaaS solutions. So think of your data in popular SaaS applications like Shopify, BigCommerce, QuickBooks, Trello, GitHub, etc. We protect that data by backing it up to our Rewind Vault that's in the cloud, and make sure that if something happens to your account and the data that's in it, that we can recover that data exactly the way it was before the problem happened.
Fantastic. Well, I'm now going to ask you to rewind a little bit here and take you back to before the cloud. I know it seems almost impossible for most people to imagine such a time. If I take you back before there was a cloud, can you share your origin story and where your passion came from and what it was that put you on this path you're on today?
I'm a big backups person. I've lost data before, so I'm one of those guys that backs up their backups, right?
Yeah.
I use a Mac, and I've got Time Machine on my Mac enabled to do a backup, and then I also use this other service called Backblaze to back up my computer, just in case I need it, because I've lost data before. Actually, I was working at Adobe a long time ago, doing a presentation in front of a few hundred people. Went to advance my slides, screen kind of froze. So I rebooted my computer. The screen behind me that was facing the audience went black, and my computer booted up with a picture of a hard drive with a big question mark over it. And if you've had that on a Mac, it is not good. I can tell you firsthand that is not a good thing to have happen to you. So I've lost data before. I know the pain. I know that you don't want to have it happen to you if it does. And so when we were looking for a side project to do, it was really backups that I thought would be a really good business. And we're located in Ottawa, Canada, headquarters where Shopify is headquartered. We saw them growing extremely quickly 5 years ago. And so we started doing backups for Shopify in mid-2015 and have grown the company since then.
Wow. And I've had that exact same thing happen to me. I've had that folder with a big question mark and equally on Windows, I had the old blue screen of death and lose everything. And it's one of those things that happens to you once or should only happen to you once, isn't it?
You hope it only happens once, right? And I think you make sure that you do everything you can to not have it happen again. It's the worst feeling in the world when, you log into something or you go somewhere to look for information and you can't find it. You're like, I know it was there. Or if your hard drive crashes, it's a hopeless feeling that I hope most people never have to go through. But it's important to make sure that your data is in a couple of spots. As one of our investors put it, it's not really a matter of if your hard drive is going to fail, but rather just when is it going to fail? Is it going to fail while you're using it, or is it going to fail, after you've traded that computer in for a newer one?
Absolutely. And of course, that path did lead you to Rewind. And for listeners that are hearing about you for the first time, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about the kind of problems that you solve for your customers? You did say in your intro some of the platforms that you help with there, but can you just expand on that?
Yeah, I think what most people don't realize about the cloud is that cloud providers generally have a backup of their data, but that backup is kind of like an all or nothing proposition. If the entire system fails, they've absolutely got a backup. But if something happens to just your account and not the entire system, the backup that they have is actually not that useful for you. It doesn't help you recover the data that is lost in your online account. And that's what Rewind does, is Rewind protects the data that's in your account so that if your account has a problem, you can recover the data exactly the way it was before the problem happened. So some ways that might happen would be, if you just make a mistake, you accidentally delete something that's in your account, that's not affecting the entire system, it's just affecting your account. Most of these SaaS applications have third-party applications, including Rewind, that connect to them. Some of those third-party apps cause problems because they've got a bug in them. They accidentally delete things. CSV Imports is another time when we see a lot of problems happening. People just accidentally deleting columns, for instance, in a CSV file and then re-uploading it, not realizing that by deleting the column, they're deleting that attribute from their online account. Stuff like that. Multiple users coming into your account as well. So if you're sharing your login, or if you've got multiple users coming into your account, one of them can make a mistake and accidentally delete things. These are all examples of a time where your account might have a problem, but the entire system that you're using doesn't. It's just really affecting your account. And like I said, the backups for most SaaS providers don't help you if it's just your account that has a problem. They help you if the entire system has a problem. But if it's just your account, it's really up to you to protect that data.
And when we're talking here about protecting cloud data, from the conversations that you're having with your customers, are there any myths or misconceptions or just areas that businesses typically don't understand about protecting their data?
I think they generally think that most of the data that's in the cloud is backed up and protected by the provider that they're using, by the platform that they're using. Most of them are surprised when something happens to their account and they call support and they realize that the company can't help them, that it's not able to recover their products or their online accounts or whatever it happens to be that is having an issue. That really surprises a lot of people. And the unfortunate part from our perspective is that Rewind has to be installed before the problem happens in order for us to be useful. We're not a forensic science group that can go in and examine a hard drive and pull out data that's been deleted. You have to have installed Rewind. Excuse me. You have to have installed Rewind before the problem happened in order for our software to work. And so that means you need to be proactive. You need to be thinking about it, but you also need to know about the problem before something happens to your account. If you come to us after somebody's deleted something or after something's happened, we'll help you the next time. It's great that we get a customer, but unfortunately, we can't recover something that's been deleted before you've installed our application.
And earlier this year, I think it was in April, you did launch backups for Trello. So I'm curious, why was Trello the platform that you chose to protect after, I think it's Shopify, BigCommerce, QuickBooks, QuickBooks Online and GitHub? What was it that made you go after Trello next?
Yeah, we base all of our decisions on what customers are asking for. So we have a number of ways that we gauge demand for our products. We put up landing pages onto our website where people can request new platforms. We do extensive customer interviews with our customers to see what else they're interested in backing up. We're often looking at what other software our customers are using, what's popular with the tech stack that they happen to be using. And Trello was just one that, as we scored it on a number of different attributes, came up really high. It's really important data. As people use Trello, they're often putting really sensitive company information in there, really important information. They're running business processes in Trello. Some of them are using it as a CRM tool. And as the importance of that data, grows, they want to make sure that data is protected. So, in all cases, the next platforms that we're using are always based on customer demand and customer requests, and Trello is one that came up really high for us.
And I think also right now, our inboxes are under bombardment from Black Friday and Cyber Monday emails, and many businesses are going to be looking to bounce back from the economic downturn and make the most of the holiday season. But of course, many are also going to be worried about downtime. So what are the most common security threats that leave websites vulnerable? Because we've seen so many times in the past where something like even Macy's can go down at the critical moment, and it can cost them absolutely thousands, if not millions. So what are some of the ways to address these threats that many retailers are going to be fearing right now?
Certainly using platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce help a great deal in sort of outsourcing the management of IT, right? They have, both of them have extensive security teams that are actively monitoring for outside threats. They've got extensive processes to ensure that people can't get access to the underlying hardware and the systems that are running them. They've got redundancy built into their systems to make sure that they can handle a lot of the situations that are coming up. So I think moving to a SaaS provider and removing the management of servers is one of the best things that you can do. After that, there's really 5 things that we talk about a lot that people can do to increase their security. One is making sure that you're using unique passwords. So if you're not using a password manager, your password is really your first line of defense. So don't reuse a password that you're using for another online account. Use a password manager so you can make sure that they're all random characters. As you use a password manager, most of the online platforms these days allow you to do something called two-factor authentication, which is like a 6-digit code that gets sent to your cell phone or can be generated by one of those password managers. Highly recommend that you enable two-factor authentication on any online account you've got, let alone your e-commerce stores, but a lot of banking information, a lot of banking sites will allow you to enable 2FA, for instance. So enable that two-factor authentication. It's really not hard to do, and it does increase your security aspect a great deal, and helps ensure that your online account, in case your password gets compromised, your online account still can't be accessed. We also recommend really validating the third-party apps that you're using. You want to make sure that any third-party app that you're installing in your online store has been vetted, that it's being used by a number of people. So things like, call the 1-800 number that they've got on their phone to see how quickly, or on their website to see how quickly they answer their phone. Have they little things like, have they updated the copyright date on their website, for instance, is just a little indication of how much work is going into it. How big is the team? How many reviews does the application have? You want to pick something that's got really, hundreds of reviews on it to make sure that it's been properly vetted by other merchants. As you add other people to your store, you want to enable a set of policies that are called least privilege. So only giving people access to what they need to have access to is really important. So if somebody, for instance, is managing orders and doesn't need access to your product catalog, there should be no reason that you give them access to your product catalog. So only give people access to the parts of your store that they need to get access to. And then the last one for us is obviously you want to make sure that you have a backup just in case all of those fail and something happens, you've got your data protected. So those would be the 5 sort of things we talk about. Password, using a password manager, enabling two-factor authentication, really vetting the apps that you're using, implementing a policy of least privilege to make sure people only have access to what they need, and then backing up their data. That, if you do all 5 of those things, you're doing pretty much as much as you can do to really protect your online store.
Absolutely. And at Rewind, you've had a fantastic year and recently closed a $65 million Series B round. And we will have a lot of people listening from all over the world, startup founders at various stages of their journey. So a question for you is what is the secret to building a successful company? And do you have any advice at all for any new startup founders listening to our conversation today that might be just looking to follow in your footsteps?
I think the first thing is building a product that people need and that people really want. Rewind is, in some cases, my 3rd go at this. And the first 2 products that we were building, I think were great products, but we didn't have anybody that was willing to pay for it. So you really need to focus on something that people are willing to pay for. And you can find ideas in online forums. You can talk to potential customers. You can do a lot of work before actually, even writing 1 line of code. The most important thing is finding an idea and a product that people are going to be willing to pay for. The second thing that you need is a go-to-market channel. So the great thing about the Shopify ecosystem where we started, for example, is that they have an app store. You can list your apps in the app store, and immediately after listing our app, we received hundreds of installs on a monthly basis. So how are you going to go to market? What's the channel that you're going to use? Figuring out how people are going to find out about your product and how they're going to sell it is critically important. So put a lot of time and a lot of effort into that. You can do all sorts of things like creating online ads to drive people to landing pages, to talking about products that don't yet necessarily exist. One of the things we did when we started Rewind was exactly that. We created a landing page where people could sign up to an email list, and we really didn't start working on it until we had about 40 or 50 people signed up to that email list. If you can't get, dozens or hundreds of people signed up to an email list, it's going to be really hard to get them to actually pay for the product. You have to try and figure a lot of that stuff out ahead of time. So figure out your channel and then work forward from there. I'd say the last thing is, at least for us, was really just focusing on customer service. I'm a big believer these days that generally speaking, customer service is terrible. And so those early days, you're going to do things that don't scale. You're going to do a lot of things manually. Don't worry about that. What you're really trying to do is to get people who really love your product and then go and tell their friends. So, work your butt off and figure out what you can do to make sure that people tell their friends about you, that they evangelize your software, and whether that be, helping them out. I mean, we did a lot of things manually early on in Rewind that, that people would laugh at. But do whatever it takes to make your customers happy, and then, ask them and prompt them to provide reviews on third-party websites, or to tell friends that that they need it, that they love it. And that's really, I think, the easiest way to get started is, build a product that people love, find a way to get more customers, and then really work as hard as you can to delight those customers.
And I think just about every startup founder listening will be working there, but often it will feel like that they are spinning so many different plates to try and get things off the ground and moving. And there's a lot of talk around grind and hustle talk, etc. But I'm curious, how do you balance life and work and create a company that people love? Because it is such a fine balance. But is there anything around that you can share?
I mean, I'm a big believer that you can't work 10, 12, 14-hour days as you're building a startup. And I know that a lot of people say the opposite, that you should be working your ass off. But I really believe that building a company and building software is as much a mental exercise as it is, writing code. It's a creative process. It's a problem-solving process, and your brain needs to work really well in order to solve problems. And if you're working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, you're tired, you're overworked, you're not thinking straight. I think we can all go back to examples in our life where, we've been working on a problem. You can't solve it. You go home, you have a sleep, wake up the next morning, it's solved in 15 minutes. Yeah. I mean, that's just how the brain works, is it needs to be relaxed. It needs to have time to process. It can't be stressed in order to solve problems. And so I think one of the things we've found has been, encouraging our employees to work reasonable hours, encouraging our employees to take advantage of their vacations. We do something that we call summer hours. So every other Friday in the summertime, we take it off. These are things that allow people to try and maintain that work-life balance and gives them time to get away from work, to not focus only on Rewind, that they can get out and engage in the communities that they live in to help make those better. That's all, I think, really important, because I've talked to, we've been in a couple of startup accelerators, and I've talked to other founders who are exactly that, who are telling me, I'm working 14, 16, 18-hour days and my startup's not getting anywhere. And I'm like, yeah, do you think that's the problem? Like, do you think that maybe you're not having time to just sit back, think about, okay, what is the real problem here that we're trying to solve? And what are different ways that we can solve that problem? Because at least at the start, it is just this real problem solving exercise of just problem after problem after problem. And your brain needs to be well rested in order to really think through those problems and to solve them. And, we've found that really worked well for us.
You raised such a great point there around when you have a problem and you're spending all day, nothing's going right, you're banging your head against the wall, feels like you're getting nowhere, and then the next day it's solved in 15 minutes. And it's so true, and I'm sure that will resonate with so many people listening. But as you guys look towards the future, I mean, where do you plan to take Rewind in the next 5 years? I know not many people do 5-year plans anymore now because things change so quickly, but what does the road ahead look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, Rewind's goal is to back up every SaaS application that exists. So we are on a mission to build software that allows us to back up every SaaS service that people want, and to do that as quickly as humanly possible. So, we see in the next 5 years a dramatic expansion of the number of platforms that we support under Rewind. We plan to be backing up every cloud service that exists. And then we really believe that, the data that we have backed up will provide insights to our customers that really Rewind will be in the best position to unlock, because we've got access to all of it. So that's really where we're going is expanding the number of platforms that we're going to back up, and then starting to help unlock value in the data that we're backing up for our customers. That's essentially our sort of 3 to 5 year plan. But I agree with you. We don't really create a 5-year plan. 5 years ago, the company hardly existed, and today it's 115 people. So where it's going to be in 5 years is a little bit of a stretch of the imagination for sure.
Well, we've covered so much today, from your origin story and the entire journey that you've been on and the success you're having now. But I'm now going to have a bit of fun with you, because I'm going to ask you, is there a song or piece of music that has inspired you throughout your career? Or what has been the soundtrack to your career in tech? Is there a song and story you can share with us? And we'll add that song to our Spotify playlist.
Man, is there a song that has inspired me? I don't know that there's one song. It's been such a long journey for me personally. Like, I ran my first startup about 12 years ago. And so it's really been, over a decade of work of trying things. My first startup was definitely not successful. The second one's obviously working out a lot better, but it's been such a long road that I'm not sure I can pick one song that's sort of guided me throughout. These days I'm listening to the Lumineers a lot. So I'd say if you want to pick one current one, it's really anything by the Lumineers, to be honest. They were the last band that we saw before COVID hit. Like the Saturday before everything shut down, we saw them live in concert in Ottawa. So I think that would be the most appropriate these days, but can't think of anything that's covered, the 10 to 15 years I've been working on this.
Yeah, they're such a good live band as well, aren't they? I saw them a few years ago, and Glorious immediately springs to mind, but there's so many great tracks that they've done, isn't there?
Yeah. I'm also getting into Elbow a bit lately as well, which I've been liking. A lot of their live stuff is really great too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. But before I do let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more information about Rewind, they want to contact your team, what's the best starting point?
Yep, they can find Rewind on the web at rewind.com, or they can follow us on Twitter at Rewind.
Excellent. Well, I'll add those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easy. So much I've loved chatting with you today, especially about learning more about how you're backing up Trello, but all the other things that you're doing there, building $100 million startup, balancing life and work to create a company that people love, and everything that you're doing. I wish you the best of luck. I'd love to stay in touch with you, see how your journey continues to evolve, but thanks for sharing your story with me today.
Absolutely, Neil. It was great being here. Thanks for having me.
Wow, we covered so much there, didn't we? Such as what businesses don't understand about protecting their cloud data. And also that very human story about building a $100 million valued startup, not to mention some of the common e-commerce security threats out there. All wrapped up with a brilliant story. So thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the podcast and sharing that with us today. For everyone listening, I know there are thousands upon thousands of you listening to this episode with your own story, with your own unique experiences and insights. I don't want you to just sit there and passively listen. I want you to think you've just bumped into me at a show floor at a conference, or you've pulled up a seat next to me at the bar, have a little chat with me. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find and have a conversation with. So please keep your feedback coming in to techblogwriter@outlook.com. You get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So I hope you will all join me again tomorrow, but a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.